We're talking about loneliness.
People that felt very lonely, 75% of them blamed technology.
And you're seeing all these people with perfect lives. I don't have that, but I'm not going to tell anyone I don't have that.
You don't even see anyone face-to-face anymore. One of my really, really close friends uploaded her entire journal into AI. When she needs advice, she talks to the AI about herself.
You're letting AI connect for you, which fully breaks that line.
I worry about the at-home workers that are consuming Netflix midday.
Being surrounded by people, it doesn't matter if you know them or not. It inspires.
What are the ethics of me setting up a fake friend to text all the time?
After a long hiatus.
Welcome back to Open Risk.
Yes, welcome back.
I'm Mike Jones.
And I'm Arianna Finger.
And today
we're talking about loneliness, the importance of actually creating meaningful relationships and connections in business and personal life. We'll cover networking, where maybe like being a startup founder and how, while you're following your dream, that can be a very lonely existence.
AI, the rise of AI and how it's impacted loneliness.
Huge.
Remote work. Let's start with this. You found a super interesting statistic around how kind of Americans are feeling across a few different age groupings. And what was your takeaway?
Basically, I found a few different studies. One of them was an APA study. They found that I think it was between 30 and 37% of American adults felt lonely at least a few times a week.
Okay.
So self-reporting, that kind of thing. Another study from 2003 from the University of Michigan that was conducted between 50 and 80-year-olds.
Okay.
And they found a similar percentage, it was like a 35-ish% reported feelings of loneliness. And then the more recent study conducted by Harvard came out in May 2024. They polled adults and they found that 21% of the adults that they asked reported that they also felt loneliness. Now, loneliness is not the same as feeling depressed or feeling like you have no way in the world per se. It's simply just, do you sometimes feel lonely?
Okay, so we're saying between 20% and somewhere in the 30s, people in the U.S. feel lonely.
Yes.
When I think about that, I kind of think about the change of close communities, right? So at some point, Americans were associated with churches, religious organizations, work organizations. And over time, obviously, that kind of like faith-based connectivity kind of fell away. Then you have this rise of digital and technology where people are connecting more online, but maybe they aren't feeling connected. If I think about kids, a lot of times their relationships are through games. Maybe they're playing games with people, but maybe they're not out in the real world playing with games. Then you have this third hit of COVID. COVID basically pushes everyone kind of into a loneliness state, which will lead to the rise of remote work. And then suddenly people are working from home, not seeing people in person, connecting to them digitally, but maybe not having meaningful in-person connections.
That, or maybe they feel like they don't have any of those connections in person and they only have them online.
Sure.
At least you do have connections, but also that's a whole nother can of worms.
Yeah. Well, let's start with religion. So do you have friends that connect through church at all?
No.
Like none of your friends go to church. They don't go to any kind of youth-oriented or young adult-oriented stuff.
I know a few people who might occasionally go to church.
Okay.
By that, I mean on their own accord. So not like you have to go on Christmas Day with your family kind of thing. However, to your point, I do think it is for the community to be surrounded by people. Yeah. So it might honestly be fueled by loneliness.
True.
I'm Jewish. And I do know a lot of people who are Jewish who, while they don't necessarily go to temple, do flock to other Jewish people.
Okay.
And so like a community without a specific domain.
Right. This is like, or Shabbat or kind of family community practices to get people together on a very regular basis.
Yes.
I would bet if you looked at religious versus non-religious populations, you'd probably find less loneliness within religious populations because there's some regular practice, there's some regular schedule, there's some regular get together, and there's generally a community of support that comes together.
Exactly. Support, I think, is a huge word there because it doesn't really matter who you are.
Right.
If you seek out the help of a religious community, somebody will help you.
Yeah, it's based on service.
Yeah.
And so we originally did an investment with a company called Pray.com that was a digital destination for faith. They do online content, mobile apps, podcasts. They work with pastors and ministers and all different kind of religious individuals to push content and work with physical institutions. But overall, they're finding, as you'd expect, more people are, not going to physical presence, but they are connecting to faith faith online, which is great through mobile phones. And I think as we made that investment, we also saw this rise of meditation, right? Calm, headspace, this kind of like, I'm seeking some level of connected spirituality and I'm going to do it through this app and I'm going to connect with myself. And so it kind of filled the spiritual nature of somebody's day, but it didn't fill the community.
Okay. I think that's interesting though, the calm headspace idea, because in a way, while it is a community for people who maybe want to learn how to meditate or want something from the app, whether it's to relieve anxiety, it also creates loneliness in a way, I think, because you're joining those apps to find something. Like whether it is peace, balance, whatnot.
Clarity.
In a way that, like, have you ever heard the phrase doing the work?
I have heard this phrase.
And it's, like you have to be okay being alone.
Right. That's kind of what it means, right?
Yes. And I feel like almost Calm, Headspace, those apps are helping people do the work and be okay being alone. So it's like they're providing solace in the loneliness.
It's funny. I didn't see that. Like if I think about maybe what church or a synagogue or a religious institution provides. One piece is self-reflection and prayer, right? The second maybe is community connection. Maybe the third is service and giving. Like let's just say that it's these three things, right? So it feels to me like the meditation movement is trying to solve the first. I'm not totally clear what the difference is between me meditating and me praying. I feel like they're both a form of prayer. So I feel like the population's missing the spiritual connection. They jump into one component, which is meditation/prayer. Maybe they're doing it to be comfortable with themselves lonely. Maybe they're doing it to clarify their desires and intentions, etc. But they don't solve the other two. Now it's funny because in LA, you see these meditation experiences, right? Or a breath work experience, or it's a sound bath where it's a community coming together for something that's a little bit more like prayer or meditation in a community setting. So again, we've kind of atomized religion. We're like, okay, religion was these three things. We're taking one of them and doing it in an app. Another one we're putting into like this component. And maybe there's still this open of like, how do I contribute from a service level? But we're trying to fill something, I think, that religion originally provided.
Also, like to a very extreme extent, it could be like a silent retreat where you're alone but together.
I mean, all these things are experimenting with a level of community and spiritual connectiveness that I would argue is battling loneliness, and isolation and trying to fill a hole that was created through the loss of religion. So that's like the first thing that we talked about. The second is out of the third of people that felt very lonely, 75% of them blamed technology.
Yes.
So let's talk about that. Why do we think they're blaming technology for being lonely?
I have fallen victim to this. Where like maybe I'm having a lazy day, which is great to have sometimes, but like also maybe I'm having a lazy day, but I'm also getting in my own head and I'm like whatnot. And so I'm passing this time while I am alone by scrolling on Instagram, scrolling on TikTok, and I'm not actually assessing maybe why I'm feeling this way. Like maybe I had a great night's sleep. I like ate healthy. I didn't drink, but I'm feeling down for some reason. Instead of really being introspective, maybe I'll go on TikTok or Instagram.
Yeah, I can understand that. In my mind, that's kind of like saying I'm hungry and I eat bad calories. I eat just sugar snacks versus like trying to consume protein. So maybe you're bored. It's better for you to read a book. It's better for you to go out and meet friends. But you're like, I'm going to be distracted by these bad calories.
Exactly. And it's also ironic because like we live in a tiny town where I could call any number of people and be like, hey, do you want to go on a walk? Hey, do you want to go get lunch? And the chance that I find somebody
is high.
Is so high.
True.
And I know that it will make me feel better because I'm a very social person.
Yeah.
And so I think technology, the 75% of people within the 21% of the Harvard study, I think they are blaming technology because it's a crutch.
Okay. I wonder if back in the day when like everyone read books for entertainment, if there was somebody that was like blaming books for reducing human connectivity. Or when the phone came out, people were like, oh, you don't even see anyone face to face anymore. You just talk to them on the phone. This is like such crap, right?
I mean, of course.
People spend a ton of time consuming technology. Think about 100 years ago, what percentage of somebody's day were they around other people? And the question now is the percentage of our day that we're around other people, is it way less? So is technology allowing us to be more in isolation, which is inevitably causing, evidently, statistically, people to feel more lonely?
I think it would be really interesting to see how many of those people like work remotely, but within that remote work, how many of those people are on Zooms facing other people just with a computer screen in between them for at least an hour, if not 5-10 hours. And if they still feel lonely or not. Because I do feel like sometimes when you're feeling really down, it's really nice to have a hug.
Sure.
You might not even want the hug, but then when you finally accept the hug, you're like, okay.
Better.
I feel supported.
I was at a dinner last night and this fellow said that like he deleted all of his social apps because he has such great FOMO. And when he talked about his FOMO, it was like he would open Instagram and he'd see a bunch of his friends on some epic trip. And he's like, oh my God, why am I not with my friends? Why are they doing this and I'm not doing this? This looks so much more interesting than my day, right? So I wonder if also the blaming of technology for loneliness is that through our social sharing, we're making other people feel more lonely because they're seeing these interesting and lively lives that other people are living or their friends are living. And then they even feel worse. So if they hadn't seen it, they maybe hadn't felt lonely. The moment that they dive into this and see this entire world that they're not participating in because they're sitting on the couch scrolling Instagram or TikTok or whatever, maybe they feel more lonely.
100%.
Maybe the takeaway is it's not that technology as a distractor is making us lonely, but what we're seeing through the lens of technology of others is making us feel left out and lonely.
That, I think it can also be a black hole in the sense where you now are seeing all of your friends do this really cool thing, or you're seeing other people you don't even know doing this really cool thing. And then you feel even more lonely, or you start to feel slightly depressed because you're like, fuck, why isn't that me?
Right.
And then though, because you're in this kind of ruminating, cyclical mindset, you aren't actually doing anything about it.
Right.
And you're just going to keep scrolling.
Right.
And you're just going to keep feeling worse and worse and digging yourself into a hole.
Right. In that same sense, you could say, well, Uber Eats creates loneliness.
No, it totally does.
I previously had to like leave my house and go to a grocery store or go to a restaurant to pick up some food to eat, even if I was taking it home. But now I can just literally sit at home, not interact with anybody, food's delivered to my door, Netflix on my screen, I'm entertained.
I love that Uber Eats does not exist here. I love it. Because like when I used to live in LA or when I was in Houston, Uber Eats all the time. So when I was in Houston, when I was living with my ex, we would Uber Eats pretty regularly.
Yeah.
Especially during the baseball season.
Okay.
And I worked from home.
Yeah.
And it got to the point where I was like, okay, we can order in and we can like eat at home, but we're ordering, and I'm going to pick it up and I'm going to go immediately upon us ordering so that I can go sit at the bar, have a drink. And even if nobody talks to me, I have social interaction because I realized that if I didn't do that, and if I would go on walks, like I had a dog. It wasn't like I wasn't doing anything. Yeah. But even if I would go on walks, if I didn't do that, if I didn't have that social component, after like 4 or 5 days, I turned into the biggest bitch.
Okay.
Like I was antsy, I was unwell, I was like, I couldn't really function at the level that I normally do.
Yeah, I completely get that. Before we dive into remote work, which is a big deal, we got to talk about COVID.
Yeah.
COVID hits, and I mean, the loneliness epidemic that hit America was unbelievable.
Yeah.
Right. I had kids at that time, young kids, obviously, it was a lot to keep them at home and not see their friends and kind of lose that social interaction. I think it made a bigger long-term impact more than people probably realize going through that experience.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
In a positive way, I think it made people realize the importance of social interaction.
Sure.
The implementation of which is questionable, I guess. Like because, like a lot of people are still probably working from home, but like not necessarily getting out, even though they know they should.
Yeah.
Like some semblance of agoraphobia in a lot of people probably.
Yeah, push people that were prone to isolation staying as isolationist.
But I also think, so one of the other statistics that came out of that Harvard study was 67% of people reported that their loneliness stemmed from a lack of meaningful connection. New people to friends to family. Sure. When I was reading this, it was the meaningful that really stuck out to me.
Yeah.
Because, and I think that goes into like business relationships, that goes into networking.
Yeah.
But I think it's the importance of connecting with people versus just like collecting phone numbers, collecting LinkedIn friends.
Yeah.
Like how do you actually foster a meaningful relationship? And I think COVID probably really stifled that.
I think that's true. Well, I mean, suddenly, at least for me, my human interactions were now restricted to like 30-minute Zoom calls. My kids were talking to friends online or through gaming or through Discord or whatever. But to your point, it was pretty superficial.
Yeah.
Right. And then there's obviously just like a chemical and biological component sitting across from somebody and, connecting to them that you lose whenever you're doing it through these digital platforms. So yeah, it changed that and maybe it moved people to this like lightweight collecting kind of thesis versus connecting.
Yeah.
I think that's super true. And then it kicked us into remote work.
That, and also to like the lightweight collecting idea. I think because people weren't leaving their house, they weren't able to do that. Then you have TikTok, you have Instagram, you can monetize those apps now. And so growing your following, collecting people to join your little world, I think became even more important and more huge.
Yeah. But I think that the shift into remote work is obviously a fundamental thing. It's like, I often think to myself, if COVID had happened at a time where we all weren't connected through the internet, like what would have happened? In essence, America stayed at work generally. Our systems continue to function and people continue to work because a lot of people have computers, obviously most people had phones. There's this connecting internet infrastructure that we have that enabled us to kind of work through COVID. If that had happened 30 years prior, I really wonder what would have everything looked like. Kind of thank God COVID happened when it did. We moved through it. We're different because of it, but the infrastructure was there to basically support us. And now on the back end of that, a lot of us realized that, we can work remote, and maybe it's not as excellent as it was in person, but maybe it's good enough. But then it also sent people into a much deeper loneliness state because the people that are working remote no longer are going to offices, which might have been their primary social connectivity of the day.
I love the flexibility of remote work.
Yeah.
But I also love being around people.
Yeah. No, you miss a lot. You miss serendipitous connections and new ideas because if everything you're doing is in these isolated content states through Zoom or these specific interactions you have, you miss the kind of serendipity of casual connections and what you might discover or meet people. And I think for young workers that are coming into the workforce, they want to elevate themselves within that job. It becomes hard for them to stand out because they're not getting FaceTime with managers or executives. They're not really being seen. So you have to work twice as hard online to kind of showcase your work.
Yeah.
Now, I would say the other byproduct is a bunch of my companies were like, oh my God, we haven't had a sexual harassment lawsuit in ages. Oh my Lord, it's so much easier to manage people because we're not having people getting upset about the office environment or their chairs or, all the components are downside. But overall, it's one thing if you're married with kids and you're established in a life and suddenly remote work fits in your life. But if you're not there, I think remote work becomes a very big challenge for people.
Yeah.
Socially.
In your own company, what is the general consensus surrounding remote work?
I think the statement would be everything we do now is slower than it was than when we were in person. It's definitely not as good. It's good enough. And we have companies that perform really well and a lot of them work remote. Most of them work remote. But I would tell you that from my experience, they're not working as well as they could be working if they had really tight collaborative team environments. And that's including my team. I would much love, and obviously we're moving towards a model where we want to bring everybody back in person so we can have more serendipitous, spontaneous conversations to kind of build on concepts and kind of get that movement going. I think for most companies, their performance suffers when they're doing remote work.
And so what are the top maybe 3, 5, whatnot things that you have noticed within your own company and the companies that are under you? What are the noticeable things that are making it slower?
I can go from the basic stuff to the kind of more esoteric. So it's the basic stuff is I'm sure people aren't working the same amount of hours and people are definitely more casually working. Right now, for certain cases, that's great because if one of my female executives just had a child and she's able to stay home and work with the child and work at home and that becomes a good lifestyle for her, I'm actually really supportive. I think that's great. That's very exciting. But I think that from a pure basis, I worry about the percentage of American at-home workers that are consuming Netflix midday. You know what I mean? I don't think it's small. From a time optimization perspective, I don't think people are time optimized. Now, the other question you could have is, were they also burning a lot of time in offices? Which people do. I do think, at least in the office, if you have downtime, you feel some need to go connect with a coworker, maybe discuss a project, maybe learn something new that's happening inside the company versus just purely checking out and doing something that's just entertainment for yourself. So I think there was probably benefits of the downtime in office environments, but that's actually not what concerns me. That's a pure productivity and yield. What kind of concerns me is that when you have 3 or 4 people that are working on a mission together, I think when they're in the room in front of a whiteboard, they generate really great ideas. And those ideas can spark innovation and expansion for the business and excitement. And I think the problem is it's really hard to get that kind of momentum through Zoom. Yeah. It's just harder. There's so much time in my life where I was in my office with a giant whiteboard with great people that were building great companies. And within a half an hour, hour-long session, we would just come up with something epic on that whiteboard. And we were so excited about it, right? Yeah. And I am not able to replicate that through Zoom. It's we have the product manager and Square One and the CEO in Square Two and the development CTO in Square Three. And suddenly we're having this conversation. It does not feel like the same level of excitement. And so I really miss the inspiration moments that drive the next level of what the business is. Now, sitting at home, making decks, doing presentations, doing sales calls, fine. That doesn't matter as much. The magic of getting people in person though, and that spirit and that energy, I think that's really lost.
Yeah, I think that's a great point.
Yeah. I miss that a lot. And I think that we'll see a return to it. Maybe it isn't a return to a 9 to 5 or every day, but I think getting that serendipitous moment back is really, really important. And granted, I'm also talking about creative technology industries. I'm not talking about people that are in different situations where remote work is great for them. Maybe remote work opens up work for a whole different class of population that wasn't able to do it. Maybe you can live in different places that are better socioeconomically for people. So there's a lot of other benefits to it, which I think are really, really exciting. I'm just thinking about the outlier CEOs and companies that I work with and them kind of propelling to whatever's next.
Yeah. Okay. So then another thing that we were talking about when we kind of landed on loneliness, you said something about like maybe your CEOs or just CEOs or people who, whether the company was successful or not, worked or not, people who started a company maybe during COVID, before COVID, whatnot, and you really felt like they experienced a lot of loneliness.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate?
Sure. I think we've seen a very large burnout of single founder companies. And I think COVID made it worse. If you're the CEO of a company and you're the founder of a company and you don't find that president, that chief operating officer, that chief product officer, whoever is kind of your counterpart, not from necessarily a balanced equity or compensation perspective, just like your partner on the journey, and you're doing a pure start from zero based startup, I would argue your success ratio is extremely low if you're just a single founder going to power through it on your own. The reason being, startups are extremely hard, right? And the chance of you failing is extremely high. And you need to have people around you that you're building energy with to kind of support you on that mission. And if you're alone and you also don't have a co-founder, but maybe you have some people that work from you and maybe some investors that hold you accountable, I would argue that energy that you need to kind of go through the difficult times is very, very difficult. And I was talking to someone the other day about, we had mutual friends that had actually like died, committed to in a startup, solo founders trying to push through, hit walls, felt insufficient. And it's not, sadly, an uncommon story within the startup universe. Like people, you have extreme personalities and sometimes they end up in extreme situations, but it's super sad. So we've now taken the position of like, look, if you're starting a company from scratch, we're super supportive. I really do want to see a 2-person team, whether we help you find that other person, but we want you fighting that as a unit together. I think remote work makes everything I'm talking about way worse, because when you go in, even if you're feeling down as a CEO, but your team is rallied up and they're excited and they're sharing their wins and that person over there just did something epic and they share it with these people over here and suddenly there's this bubbling energy within the office environment. That's wonderful. That does not translate through Slack. When somebody's like, oh my God, we released this feature. It was like, great. It's like there's not like a celebratory moment. The energy you're looking to build upon is just really hard to replicate when you're doing that remote. Now, it's one thing if the company's already big and it has a process and everyone's just doing their quarantine jobs and we're not stressed about it. But if we're doing something new and we're looking to build upon that energy, I think it's very, very hard. And yeah, a remote founder, that's a single founder doing that, high burnout ratio.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because you have to do everything.
You have to do everything. And when you feel sad, you don't have a partner to call on because your employees work for you. So you don't want to, show them your insecurities. You don't want to look to them for strength, right? So you do it by yourself. And you also don't want to show your weakness to your investors. You want to call up, I'm having a down day. They typically won't make that call, right? Because they don't want to show that. So suddenly they're just sitting within their own insecurity, not necessarily sharing their feelings with up or down. So having that co-founder that can drive through is a big deal.
Yeah. Or if you don't know how to do something.
Sure.
And not to say that maybe your partner would know how to do something.
Yeah.
But not having someone to learn it together or rely upon or just having to go through that, it's going to take significantly more time.
Totally agree.
Than it would be to, learn Photoshop with somebody else.
Yeah, that's right. Or whatever you're learning.
Yeah.
Totally agree. We definitely encourage startups to try to get back in person.
Okay.
I think it's a better move. I do think America's loneliness epidemic, it's substantial. I think there's also a lot of challenges around marriage and coupling and roles within relationships that we've talked a little bit about before. And what does it mean to people working? And so the kind of decrease of religion, add in this like technology layer, throw COVID in there, then throw this remote work, kind of semi-standard that's kind of been levered across the country. I think the equation is 20-30% of America is extremely lonely.
And it's also almost, I guess, kind of, when you put it that way, created this surface level feeling vibe, I guess, of superficialness. That's a word. Because you don't want to ask for help.
Sure.
Or you don't want to say, hey, I'm feeling lonely today. Maybe your brain is like, they think I'm going to kill myself, Maybe your brain goes there when, you probably, if I was one of your founders and I'm like, hey, I'm feeling lonely, might need some help with this, you know, whatnot. You probably would be like, great, let me help you. Or what can I do? But maybe I'm not going to ask because I'm feeling like, fuck, he's going to take all the money and go.
Lose confidence in the founder. Yeah, maybe.
So like there's this, even though I'm surrounded by support, I don't feel like I have it because I don't want to maybe like step over a boundary that's not actually there, but I think is there. And then couple in now technology. And you're seeing all these people with perfect lives. And so now it's also like, I don't have that, but I'm not going to tell anyone I don't have that. So it's almost this like fear of not
having done the work.
Not even not having done the work. It's like fear of not being that. So it's not necessarily like fear, like it's not FOMO per se. It's like fear of not having.
Yes. I think people have a concern of showing weakness. And if you associate loneliness with weakness, then like maybe you don't want to share it. The other thing that's been fascinating for me is seeing the rise of these kind of micro community experiences. So like the run clubs, like super fascinating, right?
Or New York. I knew this girl in a kickball club. They have pickleball clubs. They have literally every kind of weird random sport club imaginable.
It's cool. I have a really good friend and she plays, you know, beach tennis like every other day.
I didn't even know
she's thrilled. She's in LA. She's like, oh my God, like this is my community. You know, people are hiking together. So I think getting people together in these like physical activity settings is a really interesting thing.
I agree.
I think we saw the rise of the coffee shop, private club, Soho House, which continues to be important. Certainly at times when I'm feeling like over Zoomed, I'm like, oh, can I just go work out of a coffee shop and just see other humans walking around? Hopefully I know some of them and it's like a friendly experience. But, you know, getting into that third space is, I think, really, really important.
Also, sometimes, like, let's say we're at a coffee shop. Sometimes just being surrounded by people, it doesn't matter if you know them or not, kind of inspires.
That's right.
And it creates those moments that you were talking about earlier in the office, like these aha.
Yeah, that's right. Because it's new.
And it's energizing.
That's right. So, I mean, I joined YPO in a group called Tiger 21 and both, you know, bring people together in different forms. And I find that super inspiring because I meet people that are not in my industry, not doing what I'm doing. And I learn about their lives, right? And there's kind of structured events. So that keeps me in that flow. You're part of a book club, right? That like gets people together for those discussions. We help run a salon here that kind of brings people together. So I think more and more creating those kind of community events to draw people together is really important for people to feel strong. What's funny is for me, you know, granted you and I live in the small town in Colorado, I feel very community connected here. It's a small town. It's really easy to get between people. Like all my friends here live within 5 minutes of my house. Very little driving, very little connected. But when I lived in LA, you know, and when I go to LA now, I find that my friends are so spread out that getting together for a quick social interaction is like a half day plan, right? And it's a real commitment. And so I think a big piece of this too is understanding where you're living and how you build that community around you so you can have frequent, continual connectivity with individuals. And if you and I look at the studies on blue zones and what makes people happier later in life, you know, being surrounded by friends in a community setting, hopefully with things and activities to do, is a huge indicator of long-term health and success.
Yes, we do live in such a phenomenal community. I don't often get into those like kind of black hole moments where I'm just like not doom scrolling, but essentially doom scrolling. But I have to like remind myself that this is such a phenomenal place to live because I can literally go outside and even if somehow all 20 of my friends are like, nope, can't do anything. Sorry. I could go take myself to lunch. I could go sit, like take myself dinner and I would leave there with a friend.
Agreed. So let's talk about AI.
Oh, AI.
Okay. So let me pose an ethical question to you. Okay. So my father's 90. Right?
Okay.
So he's old.
Very old.
He's in great health. He's super mentally fit. He's on his phone all the time. Okay. What are the ethics of me setting up a fake friend for him to text him all the time?
How often does he get out?
Well, so he lives in a retirement community.
Okay.
And he sees some people, but he spends a lot of time in his apartment alone. Right. And I'm not obviously going to do this with my dad because I've come to the conclusion that this isn't ethical.
Okay.
But I wonder, right? So I wonder about lonely people that are having meaningful connections with AI, you know, and at what point does my dad, or when I'm 90 and if I'm alone and maybe I've lost my partner or I'm so whatever, like, is there a world where I have continual social connections with AI, my best friend AI, that makes me feel less lonely?
Okay. If your dad lived in a cabin in the woods in like Alaska, let's say, I would think it actually might be very beneficial to him.
Right.
Were you to do that.
Option.
Not even because there's no option, but because that person's always available. You're not going to always be available to text your dad or like to like play chess, you know, online chess with him.
Right.
But the AI will always be available for that.
Right.
On the other end, I think if you were to do that right now, it would only be ethical and I say ethical very close to the line, but still.
Okay.
If that AI, while providing company while your dad is alone, also encouraged him to get out and go do things in his community.
Got it. So it's like, yeah, if you program an AI that was like, hey, Chuck, there's things to do today. Make sure to go here at this time. Oh, your son posted a picture on Instagram. Here's the photo. Oh, it's like an AI that's not necessarily there to replace a friend, but it's there to encourage social activity.
Exactly.
So, do you want me to call you an Uber and you're going to go to your favorite bar tonight? Like, how can I help you get out more?
Exactly. So like a friend that's also like an assistant that also encourages social interaction.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I think a lot about this concept of atomization, which is like you take a big concept like a relationship and then you break it into pieces. Just like we're talking, look to a big concept like a church and we break it into what are the pieces, right? I always thought Japan was an interesting study because they took relationships and they're like, oh, you can go to a cuddle bar and someone will cuddle you, you know, and then so they've kind of atomized components of the physical relationship and romance, right? So I think now about, okay, a friendship. What are the components of a friendship? Okay, well, it's deep understanding of me as a counter-human. It's dialogue through text and audio. It's in-person experiences with conversation. It's in-person experiences with experiences, physical experiences, right? Maybe it's introduction to other people. Like there's this atomization, right? So similar to we saw the atomization of religion. What I wonder is in friendships and relationships, similar to like the virtual girlfriend or the virtual friend, do we see this atomization happen in relationships where humans are getting components of that solved through AI?
Yeah, because I also think, like, at least for me, a big thing with friendships is support and advice. Both two-way street.
Sure.
So, like, you can come to me and be like, Arianna, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And I could be like, hold up.
Yes.
Let me give you advice. Or I could be like, yes, let me give you a hug.
Right.
You know, vice versa.
Right. One of my really, really close friends uploaded her entire journal into AI. And when she needs advice, she talks to the AI about herself. She's like, I'm feeling this way. Like, reflect with me back on like why I'm feeling this way or what I need to do next. And she's running a lot of her daily decisions or thoughts through AI as essentially a friend. Maybe it's a therapist. Maybe it's just a self-reflection, but it's super fascinating. And so she's kind of replaced some dialogue with some of her friends with this consistent dialogue she can have with AI. But AI is also so knowledgeable about her because it has such intimate details on components of her journal. And I've tried the same thing where I've uploaded a big piece of my journal into AI and then started asking AI about myself and found really fascinating reflections. It's an interesting question. Arguably, in many cases, if AI is ingesting my journal, it probably knows me better in many cases than my friends, and the advice it's going to provide me might be better than my friend's advice.
It's almost like a mix between a therapist and a journal that has prompts. The journal that has a prompt, so like those 5-minute journals, or if you do it in a meaningful way, those can incite reflection.
I agree.
And so coupling that idea with a therapist idea, that is kind of what AI is in these situations.
Yeah. I think that AI and therapy collide for sure, if they haven't already collided. Because I have a therapist I talk with. Like, what I wonder is how much I should just be like, hey, therapist, can you just read my journal? And then we should talk so you are totally aware where we're at. And in many cases, I feel like if I'm talking to the AI, it has more in-depth knowledge on me, although it may have worse advice because the therapist has years and years of, professional experience. On the other hand, the therapist doesn't have the same depth of knowledge on me that maybe the AI would if it's ingesting everything that I'm writing personally. Okay, so let me ask another hypothetical for you. Okay, let's assume that you have this boyfriend and you guys are in this remote relationship and you're texting throughout the day, right? And then maybe you have a conversation at night, you have a video chat, maybe you see them once a week or whatever, but you're managing, like many people, you're managing kind of an online and offline relationship. Like even if you were married and living with the person, they're at work, you're texting nice little things, it's coordination stuff, right? Would you ever have an AI text for you or prompt you what you should be texting that partner throughout the day to keep that conversation moving, to figure out logistics? How much would you allow AI to do to complement an in-person relationship, but only handling it when you guys are not together?
I would not, with the exception, those like card games where it could be like icebreaker cards.
Okay.
Something like that. So I would not do that. The only thing I would maybe do would be, okay, let's play like a fun little game. And here are 5 questions. AI is generating them based on our conversations, based on knowing us.
I agree.
And like, because we haven't seen each other in a week, let's answer some fun questions together.
It's like a text prompt. Every day you get a cool little prompt and you guys can answer, get to know each other.
Exactly. I would give AI the jurisdiction to make those prompts.
Right.
But I would not go beyond that.
But what if you opened iMessage, I'm assuming you use iMessage, and to your boyfriend, there were 3 statements you could choose. One was a super romantic statement about how much you missed your boyfriend. The second was a little bit more of a appreciated, what we did last night or whatever. Like, what if it was pre-written romantic statements? Would you feel comfortable selecting one of those?
I think if I ever were to select one of those, I would then text a second text and say, look, AI knows us so well.
Right. Greeting cards always really bothered me because as a child, my parents would get some greeting card that they would spend, I guess, time and they would have some statement inside that they didn't write and they would just sign it. Right. And you're kind of like, write something for me or don't give me a card, but don't tell me that like the Hallmark company can articulate our relationship for us in this card. Right.
Exactly.
But that's kind of what happened with AI prompts, right? Is AI is basically articulating how they think you feel. You're selecting it. And I have a feeling this becomes pretty standard.
And I hate that though, because then it ties all the way back to loneliness because there's no connection.
Right.
You are fully just not connecting.
Right.
You're letting AI connect for you,
I agree.
Which fully breaks that line.
But this is probably what's happening. I mean, if you see all the new tools coming out from Apple and Android and these platforms of pre-written text responsive, it's one thing in business where it's like, Mike, whenever you get an email like this is how you respond. I'm like, great, that's fine. But if I'm sending something to somebody I love, it could even be my daughter or something. Selecting a pre-statement of like, I really appreciated the writing you sent me this morning. It was beautiful. And I love seeing yourself articulate in language. It just means so much less if I don't write it, right?
Yeah. Did you really appreciate it? You might have appreciated it, but it totally takes the appreciation out of your appreciation.
I totally agree. Most of the world, though, I think gives Hallmark cards, right? When I get a Hallmark card or a card with appreciation, I'm just like, oh, great. Like, seriously, no time given. But I think this is how it goes, which you can argue then to your point, it's going to further loneliness because we're actually removing another layer of the human connection.
Some people give me shit for this.
Oh.
I will never change.
Okay.
I voice text.
Okay.
Like I fully am like, hey, I'm not going to say it right here because it might actually fuck up the cameras. Okay. But hi, SIRI.
Yeah. You're sending an audio or you're sending a transcription?
No, I send a transcription. I hate audio messages.
I agree.
To be honest, until Apple changed the audio messages to also include a transcription, I never listened to them.
Yeah, I agree.
If you were to send me one, I would fully ignore you.
Yeah.
And I would tell you that.
Yeah.
I would be like, Mike, I'm not listening to this. Sorry, it doesn't matter if it's 5 seconds or 5 minutes. Fuck that.
Yeah.
But no, I voice text. So I'd be like, hey, SIRI, please send Mike a message.
Yeah.
And, it'd be like, okay, well, what do you want to say? And I'd be like, okay, well, I'll be there in 5 minutes. Or, hey, here you're coming back into town tomorrow. Do you want to film an episode? It's so much easier.
Well, sure. But wait, why is this so controversial? Isn't this what everyone does?
No, not everyone does.
But that's just because they haven't gotten there yet. I mean, this is the future.
But it's also like I can text so many more people in a day and not feel stressed about it because I don't have to necessarily take time out of my day to type everything.
Yeah, no, typing's going away.
I think that's also maybe why I'm so opposed to this AI thing. But it really is because I don't really find it to be a chore unless my voice texting situation is not working. Then my messages would build up.
Sure. You're just using the next level of technology. And frankly, that's where the world goes, right? Yeah. Like audio input's on its way.
Yeah.
Talking to AI is incredible. One thing I can't get away from is this thesis. Okay. Let's say you had an app on your phone that was AI driven that monitored your entire day, your voice intonation, every conversation you had, every text you sent, every email you sent. And when you were at a restaurant, it's listening to the conversation. Let's assume that you were comfortable with this and let's say it was happening. And let's say then at the end of the day, the AI really knew how you felt that entire day because it heard you met this one person and your voice changed. And then you met this other person, your voice changed. It had a complete understanding of your emotional state and language and interactions through the day, right? So now let's imagine that AI is your friend. You can have a conversation with this AI. Is that not that friend will know you better than you probably know yourself, right?
I would like that up until the having a conversation with the AI about it. Like, let's say I had a bad day.
Sure.
And my overall day comes back in whatever form, whether it's mostly data, whether it's a little paragraph from AI, like whatnot. I'm about to go to bed. I read how my day was. And if I had a bad day, I might ask AI negative questions. So it might not actually help me, but it might actually make me have an even worse day.
Let me counterpoint that. Okay. So I wear this Apple Watch, right? And it monitors my physical activity all day. My son wears a Whoop, monitors the physical activity all day, gives the reports back. You slept this way.
My boyfriend has a Garmin.
Right. Same. Right. Monitoring. Right.
Yes.
So the thesis is if you had AI monitoring my conversations through the day and my text interactions, my overall social interactions, similar to understanding my physical activity, it probably can articulate my mental state.
For sure.
Okay. Instead of me talking to the AI might say, Mike's had a difficult day.
Yeah.
And maybe the AI prompts me, hey, Severance is out. There's a new episode. I've queued it up on your TV for you. You're going to feel great. Oh my God. And I'm going to order you pizza confirmed.
And I think that's great. That I think is great.
So what is that a friend? Like what is that?
No, it's an assistant.
Yeah, but it's more than an assistant, right?
But it's an assistant who is also like a therapist. It's an assistant who knows you better than yourself.
But it's new is my point. That's new.
I think that's cool though. I like that because that I think could, if you had a bad day, do a pick me up. Now, I don't think it would be beneficial, at least like currently, if you were able to start talking to your AI.
Yeah, but if the AI understood my mental state and the AI understood the questions I was asking was going to make me feel worse, the AI might then respond a different way and guide me to a better place.
That's fair, actually.
Like, okay, my mom's 80, right? She lives in Florida. She lives in the community. She walks a bunch. The thought of the AI being like, hey, Polly, we've noticed you have had a lot of activity. You haven't had a lot of activity. You need more social interaction. We actually made you dinner reservations at your beach club tonight. You know, you need to start walking right now. You're going to go meet. Oh, and we texted your friend. Like the thought of the AI understanding the mental state of a human and then proactively trying to make them less lonely, more social, more physical to kind of improve their overall health and state. It's totally possible.
I think that would change the world.
It can be incredible, right? And like I said, it's better than any friend. You still need friends, physical interactions, etc. But like the concept of that monitoring and changing, it's wired into your transportation. It's wired into food ordering. It's wired into your entertainment and content. I mean, at this point, it can do most of what you need.
And I think as long as it really prioritizes and or values human interaction and human connection, I think it would be incredibly beneficial to society, especially right now, post-COVID.
Right. It would need to optimize against the happiness state of its client, of its partner. Yeah, and you'd have to find a way to judge it. I do think audio input's really important because you can kind of tell how people feel through text. You can really tell how people feel through language.
Also, like, unless like you are going through all of your devices and you're like, don't listen to me, don't listen to me, don't listen to me. Like, it's listening to you. It's learning from you.
I've run this concept before. People are very uncomfortable with the phone listening to them 24/7. But I think that the overall improvement for people would be incredible. And I also think for seniors, it could be incredible. Like, my dad's not doing anything or my mom's not doing anything where like if their data was leaked, it would be a major problem anyway. But I do think that AI understanding them and proactively getting in front of their needs and maybe even creating them friends or maybe even generating text messages or prompting me, being like, hey, Mike, we've noticed that your dad, XYZ today, you should send him something about this. Prompting the social interaction from me to my dad. Because even if AI understood that, it could text your best friend and say, hey, Arianna had a difficult day. You should drop by her house. Just give her a hug. Could be amazing. America's seniors are lonely. Like Netflix, I mean, I'm telling you, this is a TV consuming population.
Should we build an app together?
I mean, sure. What's funny is I wish I could say it's complicated. It's probably not as complicated as one would think.
It's so easy.
I'm really intrigued by the concept.
It's probably like choose one retirement community, give them all Apple Watches.
Yeah.
Like the waterproof ones.
Yeah, and just let them
just go with.
To your point, it's a therapist, it's a friend, it's an assistant, it's a monitor, it's a safety, it's a nurse, it's a lot of stuff in one. It's new, but I think that from the like, how do we improve the lives of humans? There's a big opportunity.
Yeah.
Because it also could notice like you feel unfulfilled, you need purpose. We've set you up to volunteer at the youth shelter. You're going at 6 p.m. You're going to spend a bunch of time with kids until 8 p.m. You're going to counsel some kids. You're going to give them some mentorship. Great. I mean, I think there's a world there.
Yeah. Or like everyone's watching the newest episode of Severance together in the common area.
Yeah. Go out there and do it.
Go watch it with them.
Totally agree.
There will be popcorn.
Yeah, that's right. There's a show called Miss Davis.
I have not seen that.
Yeah. It's a fascinating concept, but it's kind of like AI essentially becomes a near religion. And the AI at that point is almost controlling the human population through tasks and feedback mechanisms and jobbing, through people's phones essentially to kind of coordinate a bigger strategy.
Yeah.
That's what becomes fascinating. It's like, it's one thing to have one person in the nursing home have this system. If you have everyone in the nursing home have this system, then you can really do stuff. Cause then you're like, hey, Chuck's feeling lonely, but loves to play chess. Jane's feeling lonely and loves to play chess. They're both having a down moment this moment. Yeah. Why don't we text them both to basically go meet in the common area in front of the chessboard and they can go play a game of chess, right? When you can coordinate people for more social interactions, it becomes more interesting.
Yeah.
But these are, big intrusive systems, right? Because you're uploading a massive amount of private data into an engine.
Is there a way to make it compartmentalized?
Theoretically, but it's a big attack surface, right? Like you have,
I guess,
a lot of private data sitting someplace that would have risk.
Yeah, but maybe it's like a crypto wallet.
Sure, but still.
Like your AI is your little crypto wallet and it can connect with other crypto wallets.
There's lots of theoretical ways to protect data.
Yeah,
Right.
but like it can connect with my AI me.
Yeah.
But it can just do that like we do, except for it does it on a different plane.
Well, it's kind of like getting to know somebody, right? In theory, if you were meeting a new friend, you might say, I'm going to upload you my entire private journal, and you're going to upload me your entire private journal, and we're going to read it, each other's. Well, no one's going to do that because it's way too personal.
Yeah.
But the thought of saying, I'm going to upload my journal to an AI, and you're going to upload your journal to an AI, and then the AI is going to tell us the kind of operating parameters for each of us, then maybe we would do it because we're not uploading the entire data for someone else to read. We're uploading AI's extraction of the data. Arianna often functions like this way. You should know this as a friend of hers. Mike often functions this way. You should know this as a friend of his, but without revealing everything private.
Yeah.
Right. That it becomes a nice abstraction layer that's fascinating.
Yeah. It is interesting too because it goes back to the connecting, collecting idea.
Right. Okay.
And by having this synopsis of you that is taken from something so personal, it goes into this connecting area.
Yes.
Because it's not being a surface level person. It's not being like, hey, I want you to be my LinkedIn friend. We'll get each other's phone numbers and I'll pretend like I know you when I'm at a networking event.
Sure. Or you can refer me to somebody I need. It's just
and it's not like giving someone else like, hi, Mike, I'm Arianna. Nice to meet you. Let me tell you about myself and then giving you the PowerPoint version of my life. Like the very surface level basic.
Agreed.
It's going deeper than that, which is interesting because even though it is an AI generated thing and it might seem like possibly surface level if you really look at it on the surface, it actually does facilitate connection.
Agreed.
Because it's not the PowerPoint version of you, it is you.
No, I like that thesis that basically AI as a first step could improve human connection. Cool. This has been great.
Cheers.
Amazing.
Welcome back.
All right. We'll do it again.